Well, Hurricane Larry has made its closest approach to Bermuda and now is on its way out of our area. Good evening. I'm Glenn Jones. Welcome to Bermuda's Stay Ready storm coverage presented by Lindo's group of companies. The tropical storm warning, though, does still stay in effect across Bermuda, and that is because, well, Larry's moving kind of slowly as it goes away. So we were told to expect somewhat of a winter gale today during this tropical season event, and that's pretty much what we got. We'll show you some of the live cameras out around Bermuda right now. In fact, we have one in the eastern end of the island and the western end of the island to show you. One of them coming from the Don Smiths Bay area on South Shore, and another camera out west. And it's interesting to look at these two cameras because in a way, depending on where you live, you got a slightly different storm. We'll be talking to Dr. Mark Bouchard about that in a little while. All day, things seem to operate as you would expect, considering that this was a rather mild event. The buses and the ferries continued to run. The causeway remained open. The airport remained open. There was one delayed flight today from Atlanta, but we don't even know if that was because of the weather or for some other reason. So for the most part, it was not a dramatic event for Bermuda. We talked to the acting police commissioner earlier today, and he didn't have too much to report. All right, let's give you a look overhead as well, because we were able to get some drone video that we can share with you during the storm today that just gives you a slightly different perspective of what the storm looked like in the middle of the day. We got our closest point of approach at about 3 p.m. And this aerial video that we have will give you that perspective. So some surf stirred up, but certainly not inundating landmass there. So not too dramatic of an event. I want to show you some video from the Clearwater Beach area as well. The road on the way to Clearwater Beach was getting a lot of the waves crashing onto it earlier today, and the video kind of shows the aftermath of that. We got some of that video late this afternoon, but earlier in the day in the East End, the waves were crashing on the shoreline down on the East End. So that's really the extent of the drama of the day. No real structural damage that we've heard of yet. Certainly no injuries that we've heard about yet. And Belco reports no power outages as a result of this near pass by Hurricane Larry. And you can see the tweet that they put out at 4 p.m. today, just acknowledging that everybody has their power, which is really, really good news. So let's bring in now Dr. Mark Bouchard, the director of the Bermuda Weather Service, and Steve Cosham, who's Bermuda's national disaster coordinator. The two of them have been keeping a very close eye on everything that's been happening today. And I thought we'd start with Dr. Bouchard to give us the latest information on Hurricane Larry, which is still a Category 1 storm, right?
For having us. We do have a couple of screenshots I wanted to show. Thanks very much. So as you can see, as of the latest advisory just in, this is advisory number 37, Larry is on its way out of here. We do still, as you mentioned, have a tropical storm warning in effect. That's because the winds associated with Larry are just sort of lingering around, and especially in the marine area. Larry is still a Category 1 storm, and it's starting to accelerate. It's a good 17 knots. To the northwest. If I can just change my, here we go. So here are some of those winds that we've been seeing around the island, even into this evening. Winds still in excess of 34 knots in some places. Maritime Operations Center, RCC Bermuda Radio, up on Fort George Hill in St. George's, still seeing sort of an excess of the 34 knot threshold that we think of for tropical storm force winds. And granted that it's elevated and well exposed, it's probably very well indicative of those winds out over the eastern marine area. So we're still covering that area, and we want to ensure that people still have a heads up and are not becoming complacent just because we've seen the back end of the closest point of approach. And often what happens with these particular storms as they traverse the area through the Bermuda area is that they do have some sort of lingering winds on the backside of them. So we're just going to keep the tropical storm warning going for another few hours before sort of downgrading. Here we have another representation of Larry. If I can take the wind radii off, you can see it's a very large system. If I zoom out, you can also see the extent of cloud and rain bands out to the north as it goes somewhat of a transition from being a fully classical hurricane to a more of an extratropical storm that's going to probably brush by Newfoundland later on in the week. In terms of kind of local conditions that we have experienced here on the island, and here you have the radar. Here's the eye of Larry, again, moving away from the island. You see all this rain here. So we just took a few radar-derived measurements of rainfall. And you can see, to your point earlier about how different the experience someone in the east would have from someone in the west. Someone in the east would have experienced sort of somewhere like a quarter of an inch of rain, whereas in the west, barely anything at all. And further east towards the center of the storm, these accumulations over a 6-hour period show that there was real tank rain just offshore. But of course, given that that comes hand in hand with hurricane force winds, we're actually happy we didn't get into those conditions today. And one last thing I wanted to point out was that, yes, we did see some storm surge today observed at Ferry Reach, or measured by the tide gauge at Ferry Reach, but that was only about 8 inches, given that Ferry Reach is somewhat sheltered from most of the storm surge. It's not surprising that it didn't see the greatest effects, but at least it verified that there was storm surge. And those photographs, that footage you showed of Clearwater Beach certainly highlights some of the differences around the island. So it does show that if you're in a much more coastally exposed area, you're going to get worse conditions than where we're measuring the tides.
Okay, thanks very much, Dr. Gashar. Just stand by. I do have some questions for you, but I wanted to bring in Steve Cosham, who's the National Disaster Coordinator. And Steve, I hope you sort of got the storm that you expected today, because it does seem that we came out okay, that even the most dramatic of forecasts didn't come to fruition here, that we really didn't have it didn't even really feel like a winter gale.
Yeah, so way before the storm struck, I mean, the EMO met under the chair of the Minister of National Security, Renee Ming. We met Monday morning on the holiday, we met Tuesday morning and Wednesday morning, and every morning we had a weather briefing. We started with that from Dr. Gashard. Great weather briefings, and because of the high degree of confidence in the forecast, that allowed the EMO to decide to take the minimum course of actions. We did set up the EMO operations room at Hamilton Fire Station in case it was needed. We did align the equipment down at the causeway to be closed in case it was needed. Otherwise, all the EMO agencies were on standby. And so what we did was with Bermuda Weather Service, we had regular messaging, went out every 3 hours as the storm approaches to all the EMO agencies, telling everybody what was happened. And it allowed everybody to sit back and say, right, we don't need to react yet. We're going to get another update in 3 hours and we can see. It gives us the time. And if you consider that a couple of days ago, we had a Category 3 hurricane barreling towards us on a turn, which is usually unpredictable. I mean, this allowed us for government and businesses to continue as usual and avoid the impact of economic losses of closing down and shutting the country for a day. And when you consider that, it came to us under 150 nautical miles away from Bermuda. That was quite a feat, and it was carried out with confidence and not on a whim. Now, that being said, we must remember that we've just entered our peak 6 weeks of when Bermuda sees the most hurricanes. So we must remain on our maximum preparedness. And this is evidence in the last 7 years, we've had 8 hurricane impacts us. And from our recent memory, so from Faye, Gonzalo, Joaquin, Nicole, Humberto, Jerry, Paulette, and Teddy, 4 in October and 4 in September. So this is where we must remain prepared. But we are now so finely tuned, it's like anything. If you do it on a regular basis, you become better at it. And we know what we're doing, we can do it well, and we can do it quickly. But we have to be prepared and watch.
Yeah, no, you make a good point, because I've been thinking a little bit about the homeowner who's going outside in a little while to open the shutters and put the furniture back out, and they might feel like I did all of this for nothing. But I think you're saying the opposite. I think what you're saying is it's important to go through those steps, because the next time this won't be the result, and having done those things will make you safer.
Yeah, I think speaking to a lot of people that contacted me, they did something. They didn't do everything they would do on a normal hurricane, on a hurricane impact, but they said, I'm going to put my house in a position where I got the important things done, and the rest I'm going to leave out just in case it turns for the worse. And they didn't have to, and that's good. So we did what was right and not waste our time, but we're ready for the next one as well.
Excellent point. So, Dr. Gashar, back to you. The point that Steve was making is, if I just think about last weekend, I was worried about what was coming our way. Do you feel like, if you think back to Monday, did we get today the storm you expected we would get on Monday?
Yeah, we did. And this was one of those events where the steering of the storm was fairly well forecast. It was very confident, several days away. It's given, our colleagues at the U.S. National Hurricane Center sometimes have these events where you have a very tight clustering of tracks they're updating every 6 hours with model data and satellite imagery, et cetera, et cetera. And it's really a testament not only to their work, but also all of the things that go into supporting that work. Teams running satellite programs, teams running modeling centers around the world, regional observations at weather stations like ours, and of course our own local contributions to that process as well, launching balloons every 6 hours, making very frequent hourly observations. All of this data gets fed into computer models that make those models a lot more accurate and up to date. So while not all storms can be this well forecast, there are events that we do get where there's sort of a much higher degree of uncertainty, and I think those are the ones that we really should be concerned about. And Steve, you're absolutely right. This one was not only well forecast, but it made a pass east of Bermuda. The next one may very well be very uncertain and make a direct hit. So we should be prepared in any event, regardless of the type of storm. This one happened to be very well behaved in an atmosphere that was very well modeled and understood.
All right, well, let's take a closer look at this live video camera from the West End, because I'm looking at it now. That's not a bad summer evening. There's probably a nice breeze coming in. And I thought, over this picture, Dr. Gashar, you could just let us know, for how much longer do you expect we'll be under this tropical storm warning as Hurricane Larry slowly moves away to our northeast, I guess?
Certainly. Well, we do have one more, because we're under a warning right now. What that means is we get intermediate updates every 3 hours on the position of Hurricane Larry, as well as every 6 hours we get the normal forecast track update. So as of the next intermediate advisory at 9 p.m., I would imagine that unless anything changes drastically, that we would probably be coming out of these conditions, if not having done so already. And in fact, Steve and I have been very closely coordinating today. He and his team, I and my team, been talking very closely about the timing of these, the posting of warnings and giving additional information through the EMO to the general public. And so our expectation is that give it another 2 to 3 hours and we'll be probably out of these conditions entirely.
Okay. And Steve, anything past your desk today as it relates to public safety, injuries, structural damage, anything like that that is going to require sort of an immediate follow-up?
No, we heard no reports at all. The only thing we saw the pictures of was the road down at Clearwater, which is a usual experience on these type of conditions, or even a winter storm. So it's fantastic. And it was just all because of the BWS releasing the weather balloons, the National Hurricane Center putting the hurricane hunters in. We had such an accurate forecast, and it was a high degree of confidence that allowed us not to close the country down. So that was really good.
Yep. So, okay. Well, I mean, I think it means that today we were ready. We did not need to activate as we might need to in a storm in the future. And we need to keep in mind that that future storm could be days or weeks away, because we know between now and the end of October is the busiest time of the hurricane season for our part of the Atlantic. So it is critically important that you stay ready. And that's why it's no mistake that we've titled our coverage Stay Ready Storm Coverage, because we want everybody to follow that advice. All right, so my thanks to Steve Kosham, and my thanks to Dr. Mark Gouchard as well, and to all the guests who joined us during the day today. We were with you for live updates at 10 a.m., at 2 p.m., and now at 6 p.m. This will be our last for the day as Hurricane Larry moves away from Bermuda. So we'll leave you with this live picture of the South Shore near John Smith's Bay. It has been an interesting day, an uneventful day, but I think that is actually the result we all want to see. So thank you very much for everybody who joined us along the way for Bernew's Stay Ready Storm coverage presented by Windows Group of Companies. And we're also very grateful to our sponsors who care so much about you staying ready. And they are the Ministry of National Security, Friesenbrook Meyer, Duracell, and Belco. Thanks very much for joining us. I'm Glenn Jones. Have a good evening.
Hannah, can you hand me the Lindo's bags, please?
What do you need the Lindo's bags for?
I have everything I need for the hurricane in these bags.
Mommy, are these batteries for the flashlight?
Oh no, these batteries are for your father's Xbox controller.